Asteroid of fear.
Yeah, good.
Oh, the old
Good.
heartburn, the uh the aging, if you will.
Right.
All right. Well, so typically I just kind of make a small introduction and then we'll talk about kind of your life. I like to kind of go from the beginning where you grew up and because I think that that gives perspective.
You're,
Um
you're coming in and out on me.
yeah, okay. Yeah, because you disappeared for a second. I thought it may have been my full screen view. But all right. So I'll just make an introduction. We'll start from the beginning, a little bit about where you grew up, why you got into pastoring, a little bit what that was like, and then we'll talk about the comedy thing, how you got into that. Um, and because I'm curious, you said bucket list, but where does the bucket list idea come from? And also, do you see it as a kind of goes back to one of those questions of, hey, to change the world, you don't need to be of the world, but sometimes you got to be in the world,
Yeah.
type of thing. So, all right, here we go. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And today with me, we got Michael Dennis, and this should be interesting. He's from Austin or in Austin, I believe. And he is a pastor and comedian or pastor turned comedian or maybe a little bit of both. And we're here to
Yeah.
find out about that. But I'm excited because, as everybody knows, longtime listeners, I grew up in a very religious town. I also hail from the ATX somewhat, spent some years there, and I love comedy. Yeah, I'm actually wearing Michael Palachek's shirt from
Yeah.
Mother's Day. I took my wife, and we went and saw him, and I'm not the one who's not friendly. And that's a play on everyone who doesn't leash their dog. They say, "Oh, he's friendly. He's friendly." Yeah, and it was funny because that's kind of one of my things too. Is I do Uber Eats, and it's one of my sore spots. Is if you have vicious dogs and you order food, please put them away. You know. So, how are you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. This is like a really mild summer for us here in Central Texas, and so that doesn't hurt. And my wife and I, we're just at a season of life where, our children are kind of entering into adulthood, and
Mhm.
we're becoming empty nesters, and that's a fun season of life. And so, yeah, just having a lot of good time right now.
Yeah, I hear you. We're about this. I'm 49, and we have adult children that we're going on vacation with next week, and
Yeah.
we also have an 11-year-old. So we're not quite out of it, but it. Um, man, I tell you what, uh, um, like having like your first kind of adult conversation, you know, um, when your kids become adults and they can actually understand, or you realize that not everything you said went in one ear and out the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty neat,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
Watch.
my wife really enjoyed, the little kid stage, and then I enjoyed the teenage stage because they're processing and dialoguing. The adult stage is like I feel like it's more scary than when they were little,
Hmm.
because they're just out there making decisions, and it's a part of life. And we all did the same thing also, but just from a, you're just like, oh, you're a little cute guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And but it's a whole different world of decisions they got out there. And
Yeah, yeah,
that's the hard part is one, the amount of decisions, and I think two. I don't know. It could be technology, our attention span, everything, but to me, does it not seem like everything's more like urgent, kind of? Maybe
Yeah,
no
my wife
time
and
to
I were
think
just
through
talking
that.
about that. When I was making decisions, there was probably a sphere of like, 6 to 10 people who saw the decisions that I made, whether they were good ones or bad ones or whatever. And they're absolutely, under the impression that 8 billion people see the decisions they make. And I know I can't understand what that's like. I mean, we do that today, but I have decades of building confidence and experience and understanding, which they don't have yet. And so that is really a great difference between our experiences and their experiences because it is different.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is I was kind of thinking about with the absence of the other part of it is do you remember like making a decision might require time and research and whether that
Hmm.
meant time to go to the library you know a couple of days was like really a couple of days to sit and think of it because it wasn't like you know, it's like, oh, okay, I need to do this. You know, I'm getting ready to go in the military or I want to go into the academy. How do I do this? Well, I need to research that. You kind of come up with your list at home. Maybe you go to the library and research it. Then you take time, cross-reference it. Then you're kind of like dreaming about it. And then I feel like, you know, now it's like boom, and you can almost cross-reference everything, but then now um, with the way information is presented, the way we know that it's kind of biased, even though we have much more readily quicker information, I feel
Hmm.
like it's much more, for me, more difficult to trust it or to use it and just pull the trigger and say, hey, you know, let's make this decision. And that's kind
Oh,
of what I feel
100%.
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it's just the sign of the times, you know, like when we didn't have the phone and the internet and we were still going to the library and doing research, it was just so where you spend all day like riding bikes. And I grew up on 12 acres and the whole family and cousins and we all just played together and there might be one or two adults. And you know, it seemed like time was much more spacious, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
little
That's
bit
so true.
deeper. Yeah. And so when you think about that, it's like, oh, hey, you want to try this or do this? Like there was really kind of some thought behind it and some planning where I
Hmm.
feel like now, because you can do everything and you have all the information there, um,
Hmm.
you know, not only do you get the pressure of kind of like you said, so many people watching you make the mistake or decision, but then it's just by nature, I feel like we maybe we just have less time or even if we have the same amount of time, the perception of less time in feeling that, the anxiety you feel behind it, you know, that's a
Hmm.
real thing. And then, you know, that impacts how or why you may make a certain decision. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild. But where'd you grow up?
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in Dallas, a suburb of Dallas called Irving. So Dallas, Texas. And, my parents divorced when, I was like 3. And so I was raised by a single mom. And I have an older brother, but he's from a previous marriage also. And so, he and I were basically, sorry, um, you know, latchkey kids, for a lack of better words, of, just a mom working a job, just trying to hold things together. And, huge fan of the Dallas Cowboys because that's where our original Cowboy Stadium was. And so as a little kid, police officers would hand out, Dallas Cowboy football cards and you would go into a McDonald's and it would be Dallas Cowboy theme. I mean, so I was just inundated with Cowboys my whole life. And
I'm from Tyler,
um,
so very similar. We're you know, and when we lived in Austin, my wife's from the Woodlands, and so they're all Texans. And
okay.
up here we're all Cowboys. And I remember we were in Austin one time and they were advertising at Jack in the Box, like Dallas Cowboys meal or something they were calling it.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, where is the divide for the Texans and the Cowboys? Because, you would think Austin might be more Texans because it's closer to Houston in a way. But when they're advertising in Bastrop, they had the Cowboys meal. I was like, oh, maybe they're behind the Cowboys.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question because I've been in San Antonio and I feel like I see mostly Cowboys. Um,
They're America's team. My uncle's wife, her son, LA favorite team was the Cowboys. I said, "What?" He goes,
mm.
"They're America's team."
Yeah,
America's losing team. My
yeah. Well,
mom,
so
my mom loves them.
I was in high school in the 90s, and so they were
Yeah.
just winning Super Bowls,
Yeah.
and then I had children, and for the last 30 years I've been trying to indoctrinate my kids to the Cowboys, and they're just like, are you kidding? This is the worst team. And I'm like, no, 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 no. We used to be really
Yeah.
good.
It's almost like it's like when you try to convince your kids that you're human or you made some of the same mistakes too. But yeah, so you said you grew up with a single mom. Now, um, did you guys go to church on Sunday? Was faith a part of your upbringing?
No, no, not at all. And in fact, my mom ended up being married 7 times in her whole life. She's passed away now, but I mean, she lived a very adventuresome life, and so it was very normal. Every couple of years there was kind of a new guy
Uh-huh.
passing through the doors, and the you know I think one of them went to prison in Huntsville, and so we would go visit him. There was affairs, there was addiction, there was abuse, cops were in our house. And so I just grew up with a lot of kind of volatility and that's kind of what ended up, driving me towards this conversation around faith is because as a young person, I was looking for something, more stable. And so as I got to like 16, 17, 18, I just started exploring um, just other things in life because, my mom, there's a very, hands-off approach. And so even
Yeah.
from a young age, I mean, I was running and gunning after everything there was to do as a young person. And then just started, asking that question, like, is there more to life? And I ended up having a friend in high school that was one of those people who like talked about Jesus all the time, and it was annoying. And there were times where I would like try to avoid him because he would talk about it so much, and then somehow all those conversations kind of led me to a place of like, man, what if there's something to this Jesus thing? And so I kind of just started kind of taking baby steps towards it, and as I took steps towards exploring who Jesus is, it just became more interesting and more palpable and more real for me. And so, right going into right out of high school, basically made a commitment to be a follower of Jesus, and didn't have any plans of being a pastor, um, but that was kind of the beginning of it.
So I grew up in a very faith forward kind of area where it was almost impossible. It was like your friend, only I couldn't escape it whatsoever. Um, but so I think it's taking the step to investigate further, and I think kind of how you investigate could be different. Um, what were kind of your touch points before then? How much did you know about religion? What kind of exposure did you have? Um, and what was it about it that made you want to explore it? Was it this concept of, you know, the history, historical times? Was it the concept of uh, more out there, because maybe how it was explained and relayed to me versus how it was explained and relayed to you? Was it, yeah, what made you want to explore it?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Dallas, we we all just made fun of East Texas. And so I can imagine what a church life might have been like in East Texas. And so as you're describing that, like, I can imagine some of those feelings of hesitation. But for me, I think because there was so much instability in my life, I was looking for something that would be stable, reliable, um, and something that I could count on. And that's probably the relational part is what piqued um, my curiosity. I literally I don't think I ever went to a church before these conversations. I didn't know anything about the Bible. I didn't know the biblical references. Even when I started going to church, you have those moments where you're in a circle of people and they make a Bible joke and everybody laughs,
Hmm.
and I just was like clueless. Um, and and so for me, it was more so like, hey, here's things that can actually like help a person find some simplicity in life. And so I was really attracted to that. And as I would explore it, I would find it to be true and helpful. And it's just like practical things of like, well, hey, what if you didn't just spend all your money, but you were wise with your money and you paid bills on time and electricity didn't get cut off and there was food in the refrigerator? So for me, I was like, that's amazing. You
Yeah.
know, like that should be done more often, in relationships. Like, what if they all didn't have to end up with police at your door or visiting somebody in prison, that you could have a husband and wife that were committed to each other? Like, I just had never seen
And
anything
you were
like
kind of
that.
open to it was the possibilities of like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
yeah. It's almost
And as
like,
I took steps toward it, it's not like my life just got easy and,
right.
I won $1 million, or it just little things in life that seemed really complicated and confusing for, a young person, 18, 19, 20 years old, just began to get really simple of like, oh, just do this. Like, just focus on this outlook. And you don't have to worry about all these other things. Like, that was like water on a dry land for me.
And what was your introduction like? So you said you had this friend. How how did you well, one, did you know about prayer yet? And did you pray for like strength to have the conversation with your friend about going deeper and having a deeper relationship? And or yeah, how did that conversation go down? What were you thinking ahead of it? And then um kind of give us your progression into, what it means when somebody kind of has the conversation, asks Jesus to come into their life, um and maybe like the first time you really felt that feeling of that connection.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, he was one of these guys that was just like, "Hey, Jesus,"
Uh-huh.
and I would make fun of him, and I was like, "Why?" Because in my concept, why would anybody worship anybody but themselves? How embarrassing that you can't make it in life and you have to worship this guy Jesus. Like, that's embarrassing. Like, don't tell anybody that. And and literally through those conversations of me making fun of him and wanting nothing to do with it, I was at home, I was by myself, and this thought entered my head for the first time of like, what if you did? What if I was real? What if you committed your life to me? And it's hard to explain, but I literally went from like not interested to I think I'm going to try it. And I literally, I went to him, I said, hey, I want to go to your church. I knew when I walked through the doors, like whoever the pastor was, like I was going to go tell him, like, whatever it means to know Jesus, I want to do that. He got done talking. It didn't matter what he said. I made a beeline to him. And I didn't understand prayer, but again, it was one of these concepts as as though like, hey, somebody is going to be there to listen to you and talk to you and forever, like never leave you. Like I was intrigued by that, and so I was instantly drawn to this concept of prayer, where I didn't know that's what it was called. I didn't know that's what I was doing. I was just talking to God. So that happened on a Wednesday. And then on a Thursday, like any church, they're like, you should come to our prayer meeting.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what's that? And I go over to a house. I mean, the creepiest thing you can imagine from my perspective, we go into different bedrooms of, with like 6 to 8 people. We sit in a circle and they're like, "What would you like to pray for?" And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Well, this is where we talk to God about things that he can, do in our life." And so I thought of my dad. My dad was an alcoholic my whole life. He was a functional alcoholic and really not interested in sobriety. And so I was like, I don't know, pray for my dad. He's an alcoholic. So we prayed for my dad. That was a Thursday. On Friday, my dad calls me, and for the first time in my whole life, he's like, "Hey, I wanted to let you know I'm an alcoholic and I'm going to go get help." And so, from my perspective, where I was in my faith journey, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, what else can we pray for?
Yeah.
and and I know that's not the normal experience. Every time in prayer. But I think what the Lord was doing for me is he was just kind of laying a small seed of like, hey, I'm going to take care of you, and beginning to soften my heart to Him, and continuing to trust Him. And so that's kind of a snapshot of what that beginning was like.
And now this begins to happen. How does it what are you doing at this time? Are you at home with mom and sibling, working a job, going to college? What's going on? And how does this change the relationships in your life and what's going on in your life?
Yeah, I mean, externally, probably not a lot. It was all internal for probably the first 2 to 3 years. Externally, I was probably a really confusing person to talk to, because I had this great affection for Jesus and the scriptures, but externally, I mean, my girlfriend and I were still going to my bedroom.
Right.
My mom she didn't care, and I was still going to clubs in downtown Dallas. I would go to church on a Sunday morning, and then on Sunday night, I would go down to Greenville, and I was very conflicted, during that time where I wanted one thing in my heart, but just there was these patterns in my life that I also, I en I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. So probably not maybe 3 years later, um, just on a personal level between me and the Lord, I feel like He just kept kind of like tapping me on the heart of like, how much longer are you going to wait to just give me your life and to follow me? And it wasn't like an overnight, but probably after about 3 years, I began a process of kind of turning from those maybe habits in my life, and just turning more to Jesus, and wanting to grow in my faith with Him. And that's largely because I got connected to a church at the University of North Texas in Denton, where they did a good job of teaching me like how to read the Bible, how to study the Bible, how to understand like who Jesus is, why He died on the cross. These are all concepts I'd never really even thought about. It was all very emotionally driven, those first 2, 3 years, relationally driven. And they did a good job of actually kind of drawing out the content of my faith, not just the emotion of my faith.
And before now, what were you doing during this time? What was life like? What was your profession? Were you going to college? Anything? Because when do you decide to go to seminary?
Yeah, I start waiting tables in college, and so I worked at a chain called Chili's. I was a food server and a bartender. All through college. It was great, loved it, a lot of fun. It was a great way to make money. As a college student, and
Did
I
you work at the
majored
original
in.
one on Greenville?
I did not. I did
Okay.
not. Yeah,
I worked
I
at
worked at the one
Chili's
in.
too for a long time, but in South
Did you really?
Florida. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I waited tables and cooked and all of that. It's still probably like it's my daughter's favorite because I guess we know you know, I
It's
don't
good
know.
food. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like
Yeah.
that says a lot when you can work at a place and still eat the food, I feel like. And
Yeah.
I was there when there's like, I want my baby back ribs and
Yep.
smell-o-vision, and
Me too.
and you get so close to the people you work with. And so I
Hmm.
just, I thought it was a fantastic but my major was in rhetoric and my minor was in political science. well, I don't know that I had a great plan, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to write speeches for politicians. Like I really just like words. And I had a professor, and she was like, "Hey, we can line you up with an internship in DC when Bill Clinton is in office." And I was like, "Fantastic, let's do that." And at the last minute, I didn't even realize the decision I was making at the time, but at the last minute, I canceled that internship and I initiated a 3 month internship in Germany with a pastor. And looking back, it looks obvious, like, oh, you made a big decision there. But at the time, I just thought, oh, this is just a minor thing. I'll go to the Germany for the summer and I'll shadow this guy. And that ended up having a huge influence on my life. And that probably is the beginning of me thinking about working vocationally as a pastor.
Well, okay. So I get rhetoric, political science tie to DC. Where's the tie to Germany as it relates to rhetoric and or political science and internships? What was the
Yeah,
internship?
it was just shadowing. I wish I could tell you I had this great, like, poster size plan,
Mm-hmm.
but I am very intuitive. I mean, this will even lead into the stand-up comedy, and so I kind of lean on that a little bit, and definitely over the years more so. But at the time, I had studied German, but that's about the only interest I had in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on, I think it was Yahoo at the time. This would have been in the 90s, and I just searched, German missionary, and I got like 10 hits. I emailed all of them. One of them sounded crazy, and one of them was the guy that I ended up spending 3 months with. And I just did whatever he did. And he would serve his community, he would serve his church, he would host in teams to travel around Germany. We would work on his building. And it didn't sound glamorous, but I was dating my wife at the time, and I came back from that trip, and I said, I think I want to do this for the rest of my life. And if you don't want that, I understand. I just want to let you know. So, if we should move forward or not. So looking back, I can see it was as a pivotal move, but at the time, I really wasn't strategic about it at all.
I wonder, uh, when I listen to you and I look at your story and I think about the things you say, I go, perhaps it's that laying there and the first time you hear kind of that, hey, well, what if I did?
Yeah.
And you get that, talk about trusting your intuition. Um, and, perhaps that's kind of the important piece of, like you said, leaning in on that and maybe that's the divine part of it and why you trust that because trusting that led you there and there. And so, yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that very much. So, what was it about I mean, I can kind of, I get this kind of idea. It's like, well, it's just kind of like a state of being where you're helping others. Like you said, working on the building. It's almost like you're conducting life for the community, for yourself, almost maybe not seeming more like a way of life rather than a job or a role. Is that how it felt to you when you were there?
Yes, and again, at the time, I didn't realize like that my heart was so excited about what I've been doing the last 25 years, but really, I was so grateful for what had been done in my life. And and honestly, I've spent the last 25, 30 years just thinking, well, if you just knew Jesus and if you knew his word, like it would change your life and it'd be the best thing that you've ever experienced because that's what happened in my life. And and so I think it's just out of gratitude where I'm like, well, I just want to share that with other people. And this guy was getting to do that, every day of his life. And again, because I was a bit naive and not understanding church world. And
Right.
I mean, even as I graduated from a seminary called Dallas Theological Seminary, and you would think at that point I would be pretty clear on what I'm doing, but I still didn't fully understand like what it meant to, oh, I'm going to be a pastor at a church, like because it's a weird job, and I really am. I'm not really interested in the title or the job. I just like the idea that I get to talk to people
Yeah.
about life and faith.
Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. I interviewed a rabbi and who had left the pulpit after 12 years and but he kind of come from a artistic background and so kind of similarly his thing is the faith but art and you know all of it
Yeah.
together. That's kind of his thing. But how was seminary for you? I'm a did your girlfriend who did she say okay when you said you came back and you said, "This is the life I want"? Was she supportive?
She never said anything. And I told her, I said, you just have to let me know if you don't want to do that.
Okay.
And so she's like, okay, I don't have to really, she didn't give me a definitive. And so I
Yeah.
think that was, let's say like September. And then
Uh-huh.
that December, I asked her to marry me and she said yes. And we've been married 26 years. But,
And
I
so,
don't think either one of us knew what we were getting into.
and when did you start seminary in relation to that?
So we got married that June.
Uh-huh.
And then the church I was attending, they did a 9 month program where you would come from 6 to 8 in the morning, 4 mornings a week for 9 months, and the pastors would teach you the Bible. And guys were coming from all over the country. There was even a doctor who put his practice on hold to do it. And I thought, well, if I'm here, I should. And so I did that for a year, and it was the middle of that I definitively was like, yeah, I definitely want to go to that next step of kind of
Mm-hmm.
training and development. Um, and then I continued to live in Denton, and then I would drive and commute into Dallas.
And what was the experience like of
You know what?
seminary school?
I I loved it because I was deeply involved in a community in a church, and then 2 days a week I would spend like 6 hours on campus, and I would learn about something that I'm very fascinated and intrigued by, and so that was a good combination for me because then the other 5 days of the week, I could basically, interact with normal people in my life about what I was learning, whether it
Mm-hmm.
was in 30-second increments or in, an hour-long conversation. So I got to kind of go get my brain and my heart stretched and then got to come back to people I know and kind of like talk about it and talk through it with some people. So I found it to be really helpful.
It's almost like you get a double, almost like a double dose in a way. But that also is helpful, I'm sure, in the pastoring part of, learn it and then kind of being able to repeat it or teach it back.
Yeah.
What was the most fascinating, interesting class that you took intellectually? And then what was your favorite class, I guess, that kind of spoke to your heart?
Yeah, the heart came up first, and it was um, one of our classes where the professors were just um, continually emphasizing the relationship with Jesus, and being in a church context, it's easy for it to kind of turn into habits or rituals or rules, and just showing in scripture about how Jesus is constantly driving the disciples back to a relationship with him. And, being able to open up my life, not just to the things that I was proud of with Jesus, but even the things that I was embarrassed by or ashamed of, like I can invite him into all those areas of my life was really meaningful in helping me to kind of have a holistic approach in my relationship with him. That definitely, if touched my heart on a relational level. Intellectually, it would probably be just the consistency of going through every book of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, they do a class teaching us how to study the Bible, and um, it's all about observations and just trying to slow down your brain to see the words. And so we would take one verse and he would say, do 25 observations about this one verse. And then you would come back to the next class. He's like, now do 25 more. It ended up being 75 observations where you're essentially, you're saying, well, that letter is capitalized. There's a comma, there's a
Yeah.
space. And that just teaching me to slow down my brain and to not make assumptions when you're looking at the scripture was probably the most helpful.
Did you learn anything that surprised you, maybe that you thought you knew headed into seminary, and that maybe it was the opposite, or you just didn't know that you were just like in awe of, kind of like a holy cow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think I had the assumption is like, well, whatever I learned in the church, I would go to seminary and they would just take what I've learned and make it stronger, tighter, and
Hmm.
better. And it was really just the opposite of that. All they're doing is because it's an education environment, is they're trying to crack your brain open.
Oh,
And so
wow.
you basically leave seminary with both feet planted firmly in the air and and you start to talk about your faith that used to be so simple, and now you realize like, oh, there's like 30 different branches to this one sentence, and so that kind of messes with your head a little bit. Like even if you take the topic of the Trinity, like Father, Son, and Spirit,
Hmm.
like I thought, man, they're going to be able to answer all my questions, and all they did was just create more questions. And so
Oh man, that, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. It is though. It's well, I mean, I don't know. Part of faith is kind of standing on that, um minus the questions, in a way,
yeah.
because yeah. Oh, wow. So what was leaving seminary like, and where's your first job, and what's your kind of your vibe about it? What are you scared of? What are you excited about, of course, other than getting to do what you trained to do? And how is it different than what you thought?
Yes, I finished seminary, and you have a resume now, and you can apply for jobs, and so I started to do that, and I found the whole process like really weird, because you're talking to a group of people, in Michigan or wherever, Boston, and
Hmm.
and they're essentially asking questions like, how are you going to make our church great? And I was like, this is the weirdest
Yeah.
weirdest experience, and I was kind of losing any interest in it. And at the time I didn't know this, but the seminary was also sending out my resume to churches, and I get a message on my phone recorder at the time, and it's from a church in East Texas in a town called Nacogdoches.
Well, I know where
And
that
it's,
is.
yeah, it's this young
45 minutes. I'm
guy.
in Bullard, which is like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, in between
Yeah.
Tyler, Jacksonville, right outside of Knack of nowhere.
Knack of nowhere. So this guy calls, and I immediately, like I told you, very judgmental towards East Texas being from Dallas, and was like, dear God, no, I don't want to go to East Texas. I wanted to go to Germany, I wanted to
Yeah.
go to, New England if I have to stay in this country. And it just seemed like those opportunities were never materializing. And then here's this guy calling me, and so I was like, well, I'll at least call him to tell him I'm not interested. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll meet you. And we actually met at on Greenville, but it wasn't the Chili's. It was that burger place called, is it called Snookers or
Snuffers.
Snuffers? Yeah, we met at Snuffers.
A guy I met in
And
DC at a like youth leadership conference. I went to visit him in Dallas, and he took me to that Snuffers on Greenville.
yes, they got some cheese fries that are really good with bacon. Oh, but I I didn't take any preaching classes in seminary. I didn't plan on being, in the pulpit. And this guy says, I want you to come teach our college students. We have about 400 college students at Stephen F. Austin that
Oh.
gather every week, and I want you to lead them. And I essentially spent the whole lunch like trying to convince him that this is a bad idea. Like I don't know really how to do that. Why would you want me to do that?
Well, what do people go to
And
seminary for if not to preach? Just kind of
Yeah.
curious. I
Yeah,
didn't know
I
that. I
thought I
didn't know
would
that
be
wasn't not the thing.
I thought I would be like in a supportive role,
Oh,
that at a church, maybe help with small groups or, a men's group or,
okay.
just yeah, I just was like, I'll just be helpful. And he ended up making the offer, and I ended up feeling bad for being so judgmental about East Texas, and just thought that's a really shallow reason to say no to something. And it ended up being a great experience. It was in that context that I had to learn how to put together a sermon, and I built relationship with college students. Some of them I still talk to today, and we were there for 4 years, and
Hmm.
we had our first child there, and the pine trees are beautiful. It's a small town, 30,000. I mean, it's just a different experience than Dallas, and I
Well,
knew I
and
didn't want to spend my life there, but I really enjoyed it.
what was it like? I mean, because so us being closest in age and me growing up with my proximity to there, it was known as a pretty rowdy place, and I'm certain that they
Yeah.
needed the Lord there. How did you, because like you said, in a way, it's interesting. You said like you held the judgment about East Texas, how because it is kind of strictish in a way, but because of that, it can also be quite the opposite, where people go off the rails and rebel because of that. Um, and Stephen F. Austin is kind of, by comparison to Tyler, we had Tyler Junior College and then UT Tyler, which was only a third and fourth year at that time. So a much more conservative environment. So Stephen F. was kind of like the less conservative environment close to home, if you wanted to have fun. And I can remember, going to like a party there a couple of weeks before we went in the Navy. And but what was what did you think about, what kind of impact were you wanting to have? Did you have, how do you think the reception was? Because I'm thinking of the time period. And yeah, how did you connect with the students to make it like a great experience and kind of nurture that environment in something that's kind of like a party school, the dichotomy of it? I mean, it can be challenging, but also fun at the same time. And then kind of in your, the support you're given is real because the temptations and whatnot that the students have there are real, and the consequences can be real, whether it's early pregnancy, STDs, things like that. And, now you're not going to college or your college plans are derailed. So, yeah, kind of give me some of that experience and how you navigated that.
Yeah, that's a great question because there's a hodgepodge of students that come to Stephen F. Austin because some of them are from those East Texas small towns,
Mm-hmm.
and then the cluster of them are from Dallas and Houston, and then they're all kind of thrown together. And so my primary approach was similar to what I was talking about, earlier, is that I was basically getting to interact with these young people, 18, 19, 20, that many of kind of that first row of people that I would interact with had grown up in a church context, but maybe it was out of habit to
Yeah.
their family. Maybe it hadn't become personal for
Requirement.
them. And so I got to just share how Jesus was personal to me, and I got to walk them through the scriptures about how the Bible had become personal to me. And so there was an immediate connection with a lot of those students. Some of them would kind of dabble in what Stephen F. Austin had to offer, and then they would, kind of circle back,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little with a little limp,
Hmm.
in their step, and then some of them, went all
Yeah.
in with Stephen F. Austin, and I would try to come along some of those students. I would do some fraternity Bible studies, and um, there would be relationships that would maybe develop for a little while, and then kind of grow cold for a season. And then, of course, there were really painful moments where, students died in accidents. And I get to be involved in some type of um, kind of remembrance
Yeah.
memorial with those students and their friends. Um, so that's kind of the approach of just trying to make their talk about our faith in a way that was personal and seeing if that would pique their curiosity.
Did you get any? Do you have maybe a person that was off the rails and sought your guidance and really turned around, maybe that you still talk to today? Somebody that you led to Christ who was maybe off in a bad way or just lost during that time.
Yeah, I mean there are definitely people that were maybe kind of on both sides of the fence periodically. It's hard to say if people specifically kind of came to faith during that time. Maybe their faith became more crystallized um, uh, during that time. But I ended up starting a church here in Austin, Texas, 16 years ago. And one of those students who grew up in Lufkin ended up going to seminary also. And then ended up moving here with his wife to Austin, and we got to start a church together here in Austin. And so there's about I think maybe four of those, and with the females, maybe another maybe eight of them that I'm still in touch. Actually, one of those females is in our church still today, and so I've known her since she was 19 years old.
Wow. That's impressive. That's got to be man, that's impactful. Um so what happens after Stephen F? Where do you go from there? Is it Austin to start the church and or do you take a different role before starting the church?
Yeah, I'm in Nacogdoches, and I start realizing like this is fun. I don't think I could do this the rest of my life. Like, could I be in a place where I could spend the rest of my life? And Austin kind of popped up on my radar, and I talked to a mentor of mine. He told me about this church. I contacted them, and it just so happened at the same time they were starting a church at the University of Texas. And so they said, "Why don't you come help us with this church at the University of Texas, and and then maybe if you want to start a church, maybe that could happen also." And so that's what we did. And my daughter was a little over a year at that time, and my wife and I we moved to Austin, and I was excited. I mean, Austin's I think the best city in Texas. It's spiritually diverse. It's ethnically diverse,
Culturally?
economically, yeah, culturally, it's just I was like, oh, this is, it's not Germany, but this
Yeah.
is as close as I'm going to get to Germany in Austin,
Yeah.
or in
Fredericksburg.
Texas.
Hmm.
Yeah, 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 green.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Yeah. Grunhal. Yeah. Oh
Yeah, so
man.
we came here and we helped them pastor that church for 3 or 4 years at the University of Texas, and then they sent us out to start the church that we're with now.
Oh wow. I find it interesting. You had said something about where could I live forever? And then you said Austin. But, before, what was you mentioned if it couldn't be Germany or New England, what was the fascination with New England of wanting to go to New England?
I was just trying to I think spiritually I was really intrigued by Germany because of what happened in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
You essentially have a generation that's growing up with like, well, if God is so great, where was he at? And so just, I don't know why. I'm just very interested with people who are maybe, frustrated with the Lord or confused about God, and I very much relate to that because I was, and so I thought, well, Germany is a great place for that. And when that didn't materialize, I thought, well, then New England is a place. You have the Great Awakenings. You have almost like a post-Christian mindset. This would have been like early 2000s. You know, compared to Dallas, where there's like a mega church on every corner,
Yeah.
and that has its own kind of baggage, that comes with that. I would much rather spend time. with people that told me they wanted nothing to do with Jesus than with people who were like, yeah, Jesus is great, but it's all like just words.
Yeah.
Um, and so I thought, well, New England. And so I experienced a couple of conversations up there with people, and it never materialized. And so the irony of it is that I go to the exact place, East Texas, which is, like I said,
Oh
I
yeah.
wanted nothing. I grew up in Dallas. I think, I can't remember the name. There's a small town next to Nacogdoches that was in the news, I think, for dragging like a kid behind their truck. And it
Jasper.
was all Jasper, yeah. So this is how I characterized all of East Texas, is like that's the worst place ever.
Hmm.
And so I I was very much interested in people that maybe didn't have church as a background or an experience, and Austin has definitely been that place for me.
Yeah. I didn't know if it had to do anything with like kind of the historical sense because New England does have, very historical, the architecture, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. And so you're getting um kind of further back into it if kind of, because I guess there's the history of religion too and all that if you were to
yeah,
really break it down. But man, so you you start your okay, so the university thing, transfer to transfer, that's kind of familiar. Um, I guess was it, you initially said I didn't get into it to necessarily be a speaker, but I guess you gained your confidence and that's where you felt called to start a church. Um, what what was that process like and um yeah, what do you what do you have to start a church like in a city? What's required?
yeah. Surprisingly, very little. And it still surprises me today. We're a small church, and
Hmm.
when people come to visit or even get involved, like how slow they are to ask questions. You should be asking questions, about the pastor. You should be asking questions about the doctrine. You should be asking questions about like authority and accountability and money, because there's a lot of easy ways to do shady things because there's very little oversight. Um, because the church and state is separate. So all you need is a 501(c)(3), and you really just need to file paperwork. I think it's like $25, to
Hmm.
file that, and pick a name that doesn't conflict with somebody else's name, and you too, can start a cult. And so
Yeah.
yeah, the ease of doing it with the state of Texas is surprising. So that was really important to me. Is I didn't want to just be a lone ranger walking into a city saying, "Hey, I'm starting a church." I
Right.
really was attracted to being connected to a church already in Austin, that was already established, almost like an umbrella
Hmm.
of kind of
Yeah.
reference of I'm with these people
You're
because we're
anchored.
we're non-denominational, but
Mhm.
we're connected to churches that are known.
Okay. What's it? How do you, I mean, is it like a door to door? I mean, you don't necessarily, do you go to other congregations and poach them? How, because I know, some people are familiar where whether it's Jehovah's Witness or the Mormons like to go out
Yeah,
and um, knock and talk or what, yeah, whatever you want to call it. But how does that happen? How do you, because it's not successful if people don't come. How do you,
yeah,
and I don't want to call it like get business because I don't think, you know, the Lord's work is getting business. But yeah, how do you get people, how do you bring them in? How do you develop a fellowship?
yeah. I mean, you're asking so many good questions. I didn't plan on talking this much about being a pastor, but um, there's probably two basic models. You do what's called a hive off, where a church will send out like 100 people or 200 people, and then they just become a new church with this kind of new vision and
Mm-hmm.
new leadership. And then you have the opposite of that, which is kind of a smaller group of people. And that's what I did. They both have their strengths and their weaknesses. And so my first step is, does my wife want to do this? Because she's got to be 100% on board. And then I just start going to my relational network
Mm-hmm.
and praying about, our that I want to and that they also want to. Because statistically, like 90, I think it's like 95% of people who try to start a church don't make it. And so I thought, well, if this is not going to happen, I at least want to do it with people that I enjoy. And so I started kind of going through my relational network, and then you kind of go into the community and you just start looking for natural connections you might have with people. So being a married person, having kids, through schools, and obviously you're not like with a bullhorn,
Yeah.
you're going to picnics and you're going to t-ball, and you just start having conversations with people. And I would say like 90% of the time, people are like, "Oh, what do you do for work?" And then
Yeah.
I would say, "Oh, I'm thinking about starting a church." And that's the creepiest thing that people can hear. And so it would, be really confusing conversation for the most part for some people. But then there were just a handful of people that it is very mystical in that way. It is supernatural. Yeah, I'm not a very good salesman, like come to
Yeah.
this church and your life's gonna, you know, and people expressed interest, and some of those people are still with us, 16 years later. So we've gotten to see, marriage and kids and just life on life for years. And that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted to walk with, from a pastoral perspective, I wanted to walk with people through like decades and not just kind of flashes
Yeah.
of life. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so that's what we've done the last 16 years. You essentially, start off with a core, and you start encouraging them to pray and say, hey, basically replicate what I did with them.
Yeah.
Is there people that they would want to come do that? And and we're still doing that, today. And today we're probably a church of like 50 or 60 people. The biggest we've been is maybe 125. And we're not really about, you know, the amount of people. It's really about the relationships we have with the people.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about it?
My favorite part is kind of similar to what you're doing right now. And, um, because from a pastoral perspective, I get to peek behind the curtain
Mm-hmm.
to people's life. And, as we're walking through life, it's like, it's hard to, but from the outsider, even I see you're like, you're connecting dots of like, well, wait a minute, there's that,
Mm-hmm.
and getting to see that with people I think that's the best part. Um, Second, seeing kind of light bulb moments for people, where they start to take ownership of their faith, where they're excited about their faith, where, they're seeing the fruit of what's possible. Those are some of the highlights.
Where does so this comedian bucket list thing, where in this 16 years does this happen? Because you mentioned adult children, and I know with adult children, like I said, that I guess you have things like whether it's you yourself want to accomplish, maybe you and your wife want to do as you get room to do so. There's some things that are personal, maybe as a man, like, I'm turning 50 next year, and maybe by 50 I want to do this. So how does the comedian thing come about?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it started during the pandemic. We all have
Uh-huh.
just a ridiculous amount of time to kind of think, and
Well, because I want to know, what do you think, it was a call from God, or do you think, or was it truly a bucket list? That's what I'm really getting at.
mm, I think that's still to be determined.
Ah, okay.
Because like I'm a year and a half into it, and I mean I still sometimes, almost like being a pastor, I find myself thinking like, what am I, like, how did I end up in this role? And I very much feel like that with comedy, and it's kind of been a snowball, like literally I met a guy a year ago,
Hmm.
and just in the last week, he's been scheduling me. I think he scheduled me now for like 10 shows,
Oh, wow.
and it's out of the blue, and it's not like we became best friends. We've connected, we exchanged information on Instagram, and then he's like, I want you in this show, and so I look at that literally like real time. I'm like, God, what are you doing? Like, is this
Yeah.
just like a fluke of, all right, some guy wants you to do some show, or is this kind of a snowball continuing
Well,
to grow? And
because ultimately what I'm going to get at is how has it impacted your relationship, your personal relationship with God and Jesus? You know,
yes,
because so let's go back just a minute.
okay,
Where because this is my thought process, and that's what I'm trying to get at. So where does the in the 16 years the idea for being a comedian? I mean, did you think you were funny? Are you good at making jokes like amongst the congregation? Like I'm okay at a C-suite meeting sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
how did it come about?
I mean, I love comedy. As a little kid watching Eddie Murphy Raw and
Yeah.
Delirious, I just thought that was, I mean, he's a
Yeah.
cosmic level. And I just thought, well, normal people can't do that. Like, that's just, a freak of nature. And then maybe over the last like 5 to 10 years, you've seen guys like Jim Gaffigan, Nate
Mm-hmm.
Bargatze, just they're just talking, and so then that's maybe like, oh, that would be maybe I could, that would be fun. And then as a pastor, like, I mean, I don't know that I'm doing jokes during a sermon, but
Right.
I will use humor, maybe 2 3 times in a 30-minute sermon, and people laugh. And so I think over the years I've thought, well, um making people laugh on a Sunday morning is I mean, it's kind of easy because they're not expecting it. Like, could you just walk into a room with strangers and in seconds make people laugh? And that was kind of in the back of my head and in the pandemic, uh, just keep kind of chewing on it. I mentioned it to a friend of like, oh yeah, that would be fun to do an open mic. And he just kept asking me, holding me accountable, like, hey, you said you should do it. Like, you should go, like, just go
Mhm.
do it.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the beginning of the idea.
And so where when does the first time happen? And what was it like? Were you nervous? Um yeah, what was going through your mind? And what did you pray for before going up?
Yes, I mean, I'm very methodical planner. I mean, I like to plan out my life. I like schedules. I manuscript my sermons. And so I spent, maybe 6 months thinking about, well, if I did it, what would I talk about?
Hmm.
And trying my best to come up with something that's 3 to 4 minutes that I think could be funny to strangers. And and then I spent probably 3 months just going to open mics and kind of surveying the land. And, because of Joe Rogan in Austin now, there's open mics every night of the week, and it's blown up. And so it really just happened to happen in my city that made it incredibly easy to try. And so I signed up for a local club here called Cap City
Hmm.
Comedy Club, and they take 20 people, and I got picked. And so I got up to do my 3 to 4 minutes, and I've been doing sermons now for 25 years, and when I got done, I had no idea what I had said. I was incredibly nervous. It was all blurry. My wife was there, and um, maybe in a 4 minute talk, maybe there was one chuckle, and I get done, and I say to my wife, and I said, how was it? And she says, well, you need to be funnier. And I was like, well, okay, well, thanks. And then she says, but hey, you did it. I'm proud of you. Good job, little buddy. And by the time I got to my car that night, I was like, I think I could do a better job. And so I signed up again, and it went worse. um, didn't like it. That during this time, there's a friend in my life that kept saying, you should talk about being a pastor. And I thought that's the worst idea ever. Like, I don't want to make fun of my faith. I don't want to make
Right.
fun of people who don't have my faith. Like, how do I talk about being a pastor?
How do you leverage it?
Yes. And then, some ideas popped in my head. I went up, and for the first time, people were laughing. And when I got done, another person that I didn't know said, as soon as you said you were a pastor, I leaned in to start listening. And then as I was walking to my car, some couple said, I thought you were the funniest one there tonight. And that was very intriguing to me, the spiritual part of pursuing this, of like, well, what could that be like for me to bring my life as my faith like into this realm where for the most part people make fun of Christians, they make fun of pastors, we're the butt of every joke, it's an easy one.
Yeah.
And I was like, could I enter into that world and like have fun with it? And so that's what I've been doing the last year and a half, and uh it's been a blast.
I think it does something. I don't know if you want to call it like a permission. So I've been watching comedy a long time and I listen to a ton of podcasts, hence how I started a podcast. I saw Sebastian Maniscalco at Cap City before he
Mm,
was Sebastian Maniscalco.
that's
But
awesome.
do you think that by saying, hey, I'm a pastor, it gives you and the audience permission to, like, if they knew nothing about you and you went up there and you talked about something with no context or no reference and nobody knew why you had the views that you had, hence the point of a kind of what I do is, to piece everything together to see how it came out. If they have no context or point of reference, then you might just be perceived as he's not very funny. And then that's
Yeah,
it. Um, if that's, the key of success, all you need to be is funny. But I think by
yeah,
saying that, it's given yourself, but it's also given the audience that context maybe needed to go, well, this is why his stuff is in this lane. And from that reference point, yes, it is funny. Kind of meaning, when a comic is dirty or a comic is clean, like you mentioned Jim Gaffigan, or even if you were to watch Bill Cosby's old special in the 80s, he was a clean comic.
yeah,
But, um, when you look at that kind of stuff, I think yeah, I don't know, in my view, but, how, so outside of the being funny thing, how's your comedy similar or different from the pastor part of it? Like, yeah, is there any within? Are they completely different? Or what is when you tell them you're a pastor, what is that doing in the interaction? Or what have you been told from conversations with maybe fans or people who've enjoyed it?
yes. I think it it's a subject matter that creates immediate tension in the room,
Mm-hmm.
because people have been drinking, and people, I mean, the people before me have been talking about shock and
Yeah.
awe is the easiest way to get a laugh, and so it's obviously very shocking, before I get up and like Gomer Pyle, like, hey, I'm a
Yeah.
pastor, um so that tension, it's I don't, not a crutch, but like it's an easy way to help create a connection
Yeah.
with people. And so yeah, like you said, I try to leverage that. And then most people, they don't know a pastor, especially in Austin, that you maybe have seen LA pastors, or you've seen some
Right.
guy in the news for being a pastor, or like Joel Osteen kind of
Yeah.
pastor, but like a regular guy pastor. And so that's been maybe the best part, is that audience members and comedians will come up to me and they're just asking me questions, like, what, so like you have a, like, you get paid, and like, so do you have like you have an office? You know, like, so what do you do?
Yeah.
And so that's been, the best part. I do right now see it as totally two different worlds. Like
Hmm.
the the structure of a sermon and joke writing, I don't see how they overlap right now. Maybe they will in the future. Probably my biggest weakness is that I give too much of a premise to a joke, and I think it's because of sermons. I could take 3 minutes to tell a story, but they
It's
say you're supposed to have a laugh like every 6 seconds
it's
in
like that
comedy.
exercise, find five more things and you got
Yeah,
75 things you done looked
yeah,
at.
yeah. And so I'm always just trying to cut, with
Yeah.
comedy. And then there's been a couple of times where a joke on a Sunday, and I thought, well, I'll try that, but it's never worked. And I don't know, but I think it maybe comes across as maybe like I'm getting on to people, or it's maybe father
Yeah.
figure kind of, and where most of my material, I'm just talking about the funny things that I do as a pastor, and
Yeah.
how to blend those two. I haven't really found that out.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, it's kind of the idea of yeah, of mi ministering, fellowshipping, that in the world, not of the world, using whatever gifts you have, because the the opportunity, like you said, you'd rather be with the people who want nothing to do with you or whatever,
Yeah.
the or the people who might need it most, I guess, from a spiritual set, there's real opportunity to somebody who might be in need. Um, you're in rooms, people in the crowd, whatever it is. And so, yeah, if they say
Yeah,
that
I was
all your things are used to that, to expose the goodness or bring people to or help them navigate their own relationship.
yeah, yeah, because the context is it's just a really well, people from our church will ask, if I'm ever, what I'm doing, and I'm like, you should come for no other reason than just to watch, the room.
Yeah.
Because I somebody asked me to do a show on Sixth Street and in Austin, so you can imagine just, the context of uh what we're talking about at this show. And then I get up and do my bit. And, you know, after me, other comics, somebody from the audience, the comic was going to such an edge. Somebody from the audience goes, "Where's that pastor at?"
Oh,
Because they remember that I'm in the room with them
yeah.
watching. And so it just creates a different, and just because I'm a pastor, I'm still a human being. Like, I'm not like closer to God or whatever, but it's still just from their perspective, it
Yeah.
adds a different dynamic to the room. And then, after the show, there's people who are like, "What's the name of your church?" And and they're most of them are tipsy,
Yeah.
buzzing at least, at this point, I don't know how much they're going to remember, but they're very lovable. It's all jovial. It's just an
Yeah.
interesting context, and I think I love that because it's bringing my faith into the part of the world where it's not supposed to quote unquote be,
Right.
and I think that's the best thing ever.
Yeah. That's where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Have you done Kill Tony?
I'm terrified of Kill Tony.
I would be too.
I'm terrified.
Oh
I
my
could do the
God.
minute, the interview, and it's because my personality, like if
Yeah.
you and I were hanging out, like I'm very persuadable, and if you started talking about a subject that I thought was funny, like it would be so easy for me and for my uh as a person to cross lines, and I don't even
Yeah.
realize I'm doing it because I get swept up in the moment. And to be on that show, like, oh man, it's just if you asked about my marriage, like I'd never want to
Yeah.
disrespect my wife or my
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And all for a laugh, like I could totally get swept up and just like, yeah, let's be funny and forget that I'm being recorded,
Oh
like
yeah. Well, and
I
and
just
when you said
no.
take it to the edge, I'm like, they're definitely the edge.
Oh,
Um,
that's all they're hoping for. Yeah.
yeah. What do your kids think? how's the support been from your family? What do they think? And yeah, do they think you're cool? Do they think
No, no, my kids, I mean, they've been supportive and they're like, they're like patting me on the back, like, good job, Dad. And I'm like, do you want to, this show's actually your age could come to. No, that's okay,
yeah.
I mean, they see my stuff on social media and they like it, to be supportive or, they'll laugh. Me, my son had a friend from high school like find me on social media and then
Hmm.
tell him, "Hey, I saw your dad. He's hilarious." And then I couldn't tell like if my son was making fun of me or if he was trying to compliment me. Like it was that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like,
It's hard to tell kind of, I think these days. We all speak a different language. Um
yeah.
Let me see here. I had it. Let's see, how's it changed? So that really hasn't changed your relationship with your kids or anything like that. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less than, but how has it strengthened your relationship with your Lord and Savior? How have you come closer to faith in yeah, through doing this? Or has something been, I always like to say kind of as a result of having faith in something, trusting yourself and taking a leap, like what's an unexpected thing that's happened you never would have thought in a million years that has happened that brought you joy, made you smile. But yeah, has it strengthened? How's it impacted that? And what's something that's happened you never would have anticipated?
Yeah, I definitely strengthened. Um, when you love something, you want to talk about, whether it's a movie you saw or a food you ate, and probably for, the life of my children through relationships with their friends and their parents, being at a party or park or whatever, you get to meet people and you get in conversations and not just talking about my life, but getting to hear about their life. And, so I really enjoyed that season of our life. But then we had the pandemic, and
Mhm.
at that same time, my kids are getting older, and so all those outlets are kind of closing. And so this has been a a really great relational outlet just to meet people that have had different experiences in life than I have, and I didn't anticipate that. Like I fully anticipated that I might, be shunned or, like what you're not supposed to be here
Yeah,
kind of attitude, and kind of just like put up with me, like all right, he's done, and that's not been the case at all. Like people have been very warm, very approachable. I mean, it's not like they're all falling on their knees, like in
right,
awe of Jesus, but there is spiritual curiosity, where people are asking questions. They're lingering after a show to come find me, to talk to me one on one. And these conversations, lives aren't changing overnight, but they're definitely asking questions, and it's primarily coming from people that are 25 to 30 years old, and so I'm 50, so that's a little bit older than my children, and so I feel like I'm getting to tap into a window of a world that like I wouldn't be able to you know be privy to. And
right,
it's not even just our one-on-one conversations, even I'm getting to see them go up and do their comedy set and their perspective on the world. And not to sound like an old person, but there's so many times where I'm like, oh, I didn't even know you could have that perspective. I
right.
didn't know that you could have those thoughts about that issue. And I love that. Like that's been so cool. And so then that changes how I pray. That changes how I'm interacting with the scriptures and the things that I'm talking to about the Lord. um, in my life personally. It brings like an urgency or a seriousness to my faith, because I want to be clear, when I talk to somebody or when they ask questions, or they talk about life. and my faith being sharp is definitely going to make that more clear. And so really the people has been the prime motive for that.
Man, yeah. I, uh, I was like, it was like I kind of had a question. I was so deep into what you were saying that it kind of, um, oh, that's what it is. Talking to these 25 to 30s. What are we from from a pastoral, spiritual kind of point of view? You have a very unique reference point. Um, and comedy, Austin, a very vibrant scene, not just for comedy, but for life in general. A lot of people moving there. The world's a bit chaotic. I make this reference of, my thing is, hey, a nod to the Waffle House. I'm sitting at the counter. What's the story of the person to the right and left of me? And so if we were
Yeah,
talking,
yeah.
it's like, what what does the world need more of? We know the world's kind of chaotic, but what are the concerns of that age group that are coming to you? I mean, we all want to love and be loved, and we want our children to be okay, our age group. What's that age group concerned with? What are they wanting to see more of in the world and less of?
You know, I, I don't know if it's anecdotal just off the people that I've met or the things that I've heard them talk about, but I definitely think one theme is there's a longing for truth. There's a
Mm,
longing for something to be reliable because from their perspective, it seems like politicians aren't reliable, institutions aren't reliable, corporations aren't reliable. So, what is, and so there's maybe hesitation that, surely it can't be Christianity, surely it can't be the Bible, but there's a curiosity about faith, about the Bible, about who Jesus is. I mean, I don't I don't think it's like the TV show Amazon Chosen like is like
hmm
number one or top 10, or I mean, there's definitely like a kind of a spiritual curiosity that for Austin that I haven't seen
In a
in
while.
years. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was starting the church and I would tell people like, hey, I'm gonna start, and the most common response is, why would you do that?
Well, I was
Like, please
there.
don't do.
We were there 2008 to 2015, I
Yeah.
think, or yeah, 2007-ish. I worked at Brack downtown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife worked at Seton Northwest, but I worked in the ER there nights, weekends for 3.5 years. So I've seen it all. I've probably seen all the people that needed to come to faith.
Yeah.
While they were metabolizing to freedom. A lot of good people. Just, hey, we're human and
Yeah.
there's a lot of pain in the world, and it's funny you were talking about that. I'm like, because I think even for our age group a little bit, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying and having the time and the bubble to make decisions because of how slow things were, and now having lightning fast instant information in your hand. I think our age group, because we grew up believing, and maybe you saw like Bill Clinton's little thing with Monica Lewinsky or whatever, and that was kind of you know, but we too, after the pandemic, have to question and have this trust with the government, like the Gen X people, I think, because we were
Yeah.
raised in a very patriotic, let's hide under your desk to
Yeah.
practice for drills and the Cold War and all that. And so I think, you know, maybe our age group, the question in truth comes around is kind of similar because I feel the same way of going, corporations aren't trustworthy and
Yeah.
politicians aren't trustworthy. Like for me, I mean, I got laid off during the pandemic. I had a master's degree. I thought that doesn't happen, it happens for
Right.
people with not that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I feel like it's kind of the same thing, but for people half the age. And I think part of it is how you grew up with the information and what was going on, and the same for
Hmm.
us. And we kind of had that blind trust because we kind of had to have a faith because there was so much unknown. And now that you have known everything in your hand almost,
Yeah.
it can make discerning the truth quite more difficult. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I feel like for myself is um, discernment of truth takes me longer. Is like I have more information, but it takes me just as long to make the decision, if not longer, because I have to look for a valid or solid information because not all information is created equal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so hard. Like we just talked about this a couple weeks ago in on Sunday morning and about, a subject like immigration right now is so um, complicated
Hmm.
and the people in your life, like if you say like a wrong word, you're like, oh well, you're a Nazi,
Yeah.
or you're like open borders, you're a globalist, like we're
Hmm.
so quick to put people on labels, and so you're left in this place of like, well, how do I view this subject and speak to it, eloquently and wise and really you don't have all the information because like our government's not telling us why it
Right.
hasn't been solved for like 40 years and they've known about it and there's
Yeah.
obviously and then media is not here to be helpful, they're
Yeah.
not making our lives easier and
It's
so
it's
you're kind
designed to
of
sell.
left, yeah, you're left in this place of just like confusion and frustration and apathy and that's just one subject that's going on right now. There's like 100 of them and it's so difficult.
Yeah. I'm yeah. Yeah. It it is. And that's I think one of those things I think having somebody like you and the ability to a congregation to kind of broach that subject because that's one of the areas where it can actually um, come about and potentially be talked about because I feel like right now we're just so at each other that people don't even want to have they're not even open to the conversation, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. It's like, nope, I have my mind made up, but it's like, really we don't get any closer to solutions unless we actually talk about the thing that's painful,
yeah,
and we have to talk about it without screaming at each other.
yeah,
And so, I always and that I think comedy is important in that reason too, to kind of break the ice or um, sometimes it just it can be a joke of what we're all thinking, or it's like, oh, that again, everybody's thinking it. And so, yeah, it has such an important place. And I think it can be used either way. But, at the end of the day, people do have to remember it's just people saying lines. They're not necessarily. It's not necessarily a belief. That's not who they are. This is what they get
yeah,
paid to do. It's an actual profession. And yeah, it's interesting and convincing people of that. And but a lot of it's them too. They don't understand about identity, profession, and things like that. And then everything becomes personal. And yeah,
yeah.
it's a whole
Yeah, I
mess.
try to say that in my comedy sets, periodically of like, just being silly. Like I'm just being silly,
Right.
we're just trying to laugh and, not trying to, push, some agenda on people, just having fun and I think I do feel like, and maybe over the last year that people have relaxed a little, especially at a comedy show. Maybe at a church, maybe not, but like at a comedy show, people have relaxed more. Sometimes people will still yell at the comedian, but that's not that often.
Yeah, not too bad. Well, that's good. What's one question I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Oh, oh man, you. I guess we didn't talk about my marriage very much. That would be, I'm very thankful for my wife, and especially after seeing my mom go through so many
Mm.
marriages, and to be married for 26 years, my wife makes it really easy. Um, but she is like a huge like part of my life, and she comes, she's helped me. She's been a part of me being a pastor, since this whole process. And then now, coming to, comedy shows that, most of the time, it's about content from other
Yeah.
comedians that she's like, I don't really want to hear that particular stuff, but she's supportive. And then I joke that her hobby, she just recently got into smoking meat. And I was like, man, this is the best because when you support me, you have to come to a show. But when I support you, I just get smoked meats. And so
Ooh,
this is
that is
this is
awesome.
it's the best for me.
What are
So
having been married for 26 years, and I'm certain you've counseled some people, um, what any advice? What's your best advice for couples out there? Be it 26 years or be it 5 years or 5 months.
yeah, well, I mean, my faith answer is going to be Jesus because that just is going to remove so many other hurdles in life. So it makes it a lot more simple. But just practically, I mean, communication. If a couple can communicate, then they can get through anything. And it sounds really simple, like, oh yeah, well, it's just words. But
Oh no.
yeah,
It's tone,
so
delivery, looks.
yeah,
Uh, there's so
yeah.
much that goes into it.
And so sometimes my wife, we learned this exercise early on, and we still use it after 26 years of marriage, is where we will test like what I heard you say that you want me to put away the dishes, before we leave to go on a date. And she can say no. And I didn't say that at all. What I said was I don't like that there's dishes in the sink, but we don't need to do that. But so you get to kind of clarify.
Yeah.
But for a lot of times we can definitely understand each other, but then we have those seasons where we're just like, what are you saying? And we have to just kind of slow down to be like, okay, so communication, like just you can't work on that enough, celebrate it enough. Like
And
it's
I think
worth investing in.
remembering, I often find that when you have the friction in the communication, reminding like managing teams, like, hey, we have the same goal. Like
Yeah,
we're just trying to solve it a different way, and we're kind of maybe fighting for our way in a way.
yeah,
But really it's about what's the best. We're on the same team, same outcome. And I think that's important to remember. Because if you're not working towards the same outcome, then I have no idea what you're doing. Because I'm certain that, I know even doing this, 7/26/25 will be 2 years of this podcast. And um, once my wife understood that, you know, I'm a kind, caring, compassionate person. Yes, I did healthcare for 12 years straight, and this is the same kind, caring, compassion. It's just me using whatever God's put in my heart in a different way. How it comes about
yeah,
is just different.
yeah,
But as long as the intent and the why and where I feel like it comes from remains true, then, you know, whether it's in the hospital, Uber driving, podcasting, as long as it's of service, I feel good about it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and when she got behind me, there was a big difference. I think once she understood that, hey, I'm still the driven guy, because when we had my 1 year old and I was in graduate school and she seen me tackle all this on into kind of, well, you're not going to use your master's and go back to corporate. It's a understanding type of thing. But once you understand that, well, I can do these odd things and work on doing this and building this and gives me the freedom to have more time with you and our daughter. And this is the time now because when our 11-year-old turns 18 and she wants to do her own thing, if I need to go to an office, I can go then.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's really about trying to capture that time. But um, yes, having a wife that supports you makes
Yeah.
a huge difference in everything.
Well, even being for you to be able to communicate, you just did 30 seconds, which I'm sure was a long process of you finding the words and
Mhm.
understanding, where there was a disconnect. That just doesn't happen like in the blink of an eye. And so just having a commitment to like, hey, I'm going to keep coming back to this. Um, and that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a journey, but that's what it's all about. But
Yeah.
well, all right, man. My call to action. Um, tell people where they can find you.
Oh, I mean, Instagram, Michael Dennis Comedy is probably the easiest place to find updates.
All right. And do you go anywhere outside of Austin for comedy?
And
Not at the moment,
not not at the moment, no.
but you're open.
Um, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of am taking this case, case by case. My general principle has been say yes to everything. Um, and so as long as opportunities keep coming up, I probably would err on saying yes, and I'll use that process to kind of discern, the next steps.
Yeah. Well, never know. You never know. There's
Yeah.
DFW. Hey, we got, believe it or not, Tyler, they moved their little comedy club and it's gotten bigger, better location. So,
Is that the
you,
Tyler Rose Comedy Club?
yeah,
Yeah, there's a girl that I performed with. Her name is Donna Lee,
I feel
and
like I know.
I think she either just recently performed there or she's about to perform at that comedy club. And so I've seen that on Instagram.
And
That's great.
Jason Salmon's coming in October.
Okay.
I'm excited to see him because Southern, but also like he had the biscuits and gravy special, which was the Waffle House theme kind of in the lettering. And so that was always kind of an attractive thing to me. I noticed it right away. But yeah, we when I took my wife there, we went and saw a show and I interviewed one of the comedians. Um
Oh, nice.
yeah, Spencer Celio. He had yeah, he's in Dallas. He lives off of or lives in Deep Ellum or off of Greenville, one or the other. But
Yeah,
he
okay.
was yeah, he was in New York for like 6 years, recently moved back to Dallas, and I don't know how much he's doing comedy, but he came with Michael Palachuk and Kenny Lee, who was like best comic in Dallas or something. And but yeah, he was like, because I enjoy it and whatnot. He's like, maybe you should try open mic. I'm like, maybe, but it's one of those things of going like the cerebral thing of, like interviewing him, like he's a smart kid and stuff because I guess if you listen to comedy podcasts and you're around people and you look at the process, you understand that it doesn't just happen.
Yeah,
That it
yeah.
takes time and there's but I'm always interested in like people's process and stuff like that and how they got there. But yeah, and that,
Well, also, in my experience, most people only know of like Shane Gillis,
yeah.
the mega stars, and they don't realize, what Pee Wee League looks like,
Or
starting off.
there's even work. Well, hey, but even the working comedians who might not, I mean, until you
Yeah,
really, when I started listening to podcasts, I then became more aware of comedians, but people don't realize, like, I mean, Chingo Bling, who, like, they're on the road on the weekend, they're in their hometown, what, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe doing some open mics. Thursday, they might go out and then they're hitting the road and it's weekend after weekend. And, um, when you start throwing in like if you have wife and kids or, like
yeah.
he said like, oh, maybe his parents watch his kids while he goes out on the weekend and does the shows or the wife, the ex-wife or whoever. But, you know, yes, there's a whole group of working comedians who make their living out there and they're gone all the time. And understanding like an unsigned musician, the work, the effort, what it means to be on the road and the craft and doing it a couple of times a evening maybe and um, maybe bombing and dealing with
Yeah.
that. Um, it's a super complex thing, and it it's hard. And the people you know of, more often than not, already went through the mud on all that other stuff. And I just have a lot of respect for that and the grind and the process. And, so like even you sticking with it for 18 months, that says a lot. I mean, it's like me hitting 2 years of the podcast. It's like
Yeah.
you're willing to grind it out. And at 49, it's like, well, it's about the process. I get to have great conversations with people. Our children, this will be recorded for them.
Yeah.
We all get the same ending. We never know when, but should something happen, you know, we have children who can go back and go, oh, this is why my dad did this, you know, or maybe they never knew why you went to seminary or any of those experiences. And so I think this is that opportunity to kind of capture that. And we have the technology, and so it's so multi-purposed. And
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's like the best time to be 50 also because we have, the experience and also the same opportunities, so anything you dream up, like, well, why not go? My wife is like, what if I played the cello? And I'm like, yeah, let's go get a cello. Like you do it for 6 months and then like, why not? Like, what a great time to be able to just try things
yeah,
and maybe you find great lifetime hobbies and maybe you don't. And especially as empty nesters now, like we get date nights like every night of the week, so
yeah.
we have a lot of flexibility. And so I've really, I've enjoyed this season. It's been a lot of fun.
And so you think it's divine and a calling from the Lord? Or are we still waiting for the verdict on that one?
You know, yeah, probably still waiting because I definitely have, moments where there are doubts, because it does all that grind you just spoke to is 100% accurate. And, you go to an open mic for 3 hours and you get up for 3 minutes and like the driving and, the cost. And it's like, and so there are definitely moments where I'm like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
Like is this a waste of my time? And so I don't know that I'm not convinced that this is just like a really fun hobby and maybe that's the extent of it. Um and so I don't know that I know yet. Like it's still too early.
Yeah. You'll know one day when you sat there for the 3 hours for your 3 minutes and you have maybe just a life-changing conversation with somebody, and maybe not life-changing for you, but life-changing for them. And,
Yeah,
with that, that's how I always like to end is
yeah.
I always say is you go out and be the person that you would want to meet,
There you go. There you go.
because yeah, um be the person you need.
Yeah.
If you want real ones, show up as real.
Mm,
So,
that's good, Richard. That's good.
well, all right, man. I appreciate you spending your time with me, your most valuable asset, the thing we can never get any more of. So thank you from me and my audience, and I'll hit you up on Podmatch when it all comes out.
All right, Richard. Thanks so much for your time. This was fantastic. Really enjoyable. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Peace.